Claude McKay and his impact on the Harlem Renaissance. Claude McKay's real name was Festus Claudius McKay. McKay had a huge impact on the Harlem Renaissance. When McKay first got to the U.S., he encountered a lot of racism. If We Must Die would be his most famous work and the one that impacted society the most. If We Must Die was revolutionary and gave motivation and courage to the blacks. McKay was a black radical and founded the revolutionary organization known as the African Blood Brotherhood. In 1928, McKay would publish his most famous novel, called Home to Harlem. The story depicted street life in Harlem at that time. The story impacted the black society in a big way, which is why McKay won the Harmon Gold Award for Literature for this book.
Claude McKay was a key literary figure during the Harlem Renaissance. He was born in Sunnyvale, Jamaica. Son of peasant farmers, he was influenced with racial pride and a great sense of his African culture. This is why a majority of his works have to do with peasant life in Jamaica. His early literary interest was in English poetry. He was lucky enough to have a brother that was a teacher and a neighbor that was an Englishman who happened to study the English masters. McKay began to mimic many of the great English authors, but then he was advised by his neighbor to begin producing poems in Jamaican dialect. At 17, he moved around from Brownstown to Kingston. In Kingston, he experienced racism for the first time in his life because Kingston happens to be predominantly white. When he returned to Sunnyvale, he published his first works, the verse collection Songs of Jamaica and Constab Ballads in London in 1912. These two works were just explaining the life of black Jamaicans in Jamaica. These two works were good enough to land him a trip to America, where he received a college education. But this college education was short-lived because after 2 months, he dropped out and left to New York. At New York, he encountered even more racism than at Kingston. This compelled him to continue his poetry. Later on, he became friends with the Communist man. This man influenced his writing style greatly because from then on, he was writing about the oppression of blacks. Overall, Claude McKay fought against the oppression of blacks through his literary writings, writing about the peasant life in Jamaica and how whites oppressed the blacks.